Hello, welcome to LOA, the channel where we talk about all things law of attraction. And today I bring with great joy my very first interview, and it happens to be my daughter, Arikah. And we were gonna talk about law of attraction from her point of view. And I'm just gonna jump right into the question so you can get her perspective on the law of attraction. So, what is law of attraction? And how do you apply it in your life?
So, law of attraction to me is not just my thoughts, but the energy and intention behind them. So, whether it's just a passing thought or something I meditate on or try to visualize, I would consider that me trying to attract something. And how I use it in my everyday life, because I'm a girl, I love to shop. And so I feel like that's a very small example of something that I attract in my life. But I'll create a list of things that I like, and I'll look over it, I'll be shopping, and I'll heart something. And that's a sense of me already attracting it into my life. I guess that's an example of how I use it.
All right. So what brought you to the awareness that, hey, these lists are equaling them coming into my existence? Like, when did that aha moment happen?
I think it was more so when I realized the pattern was occurring, that it was just a passing thought. I would just be like, oh, I just really want this kind of like corduroy jacket, and I'd write it down as something I want to get in the future, and then somehow it would just appear in a shop that I wasn't even going there to shop for it, and it would just be sitting there, my size and everything. So once I started seeing this reoccurring pattern, not just in my lists, but things that I thought about, it would just appear. And I realized, I was like, wow, that's actually happening. I'm attracting things. And of course, when I was younger, you always used to say thoughts become things, but I took that more as like a moral thing. If I'm thinking negative things, like that's gonna happen. But not even so, just like attracting good things into my life. And that just started happening.
Well, that's a good segue just to kind of let you know some background. We, meaning my husband and I, are both very spiritual. We actually come back from some religious backgrounds too, that we kind of have been able to be liberated from the superstructure of it and have a great relationship with God and be able to quilt that together how we may. But from the very beginning of her childhood, we were told by God to never interpret scripture for her or really pave the way that she must go, that she would need to find her own path, and that we were to trust that she would have that experience and be able to find him. And I've, as a person watching her life, been able to see that that trust and that decision has paid off, because she has organically found God in a way that I think people have to go through some more struggles and maybe break down some paradigms and make it their own. She's been able to make it her own from the beginning, with just a little bit of nudges here and there where, like, I would say thoughts become things, and I would wait for her to come and ask me questions, and I would only give it to her from my perspective and but say, what do you think God is saying to you? So really giving her the opportunity and making her feel so normal to seek God, to know him and hear him yourself. And so she's naturally run. And what are some of your practices that you've come into your own?
Right. I was just going to add to what you said. Like, you weren't really pushing anything, because it's like saying a saying of, oh, the taking your time. It was thoughts become things was just a saying like that. It wasn't trying to push anything down my throat in any way. It was even me leaving it open to interpretation, because that way I was able to interpret it and be like, oh wow, it's not even just these kinds of thoughts. I was able to organically make it my own journey. But your question again was
so what are some of the practices that you kind of got invited and wooed by God to indulge in, to find him and feel close to him and hear him?
For me, I noticed that meditation was a way for me to download things. And I didn't even use it as a term of meditation. I think I told you as a kid, right before I'd go to sleep, I would just lay down in stillness and imagine things. And it was more so my way of doing that was because I wanted to have beautiful dreams, or so I could just have pleasant sleep, and I loved wandering in my mind. I was a very imaginative kid. But I didn't even know that I was meditating and attracting things. So I feel like that was one of those times of prayer, times of stillness that I was taking, that I didn't even have a label for it.
Yeah.
But I think that was definitely one of those practices that I had, was just kind of investigating, having this mind palace and exploring it.
Mind palace, I love
This
that.
mind palace and exploring it. And it's still not been fully explored yet, but I think that was one of my earliest practices and something I still do now. And it's just one of those things I visualize. I would say, oh, I see myself driving this car. I see myself making this type of money, doing this career. And it just kind of falls into place. But nothing was too intentful. It was just bliss and just imagining.
That leads me to another question. What do you feel the difference is when you really are wanting something really bad, and maybe there's some undertone of impatience or striving, versus the difference of when you just make that list and you know it's kind of like an order to the universe, and you know it's just in the mail? What is the difference of those feelings? Because we know feelings are frequencies, but
Right.
what are the difference is not only in your feelings, but you think your results of your desires?
I have so many examples for that. I think one thing, a lot of my friends oftentimes look at me and like, Arikah, why does things just land in your lap? Like,
Yeah.
I want it so bad. And it's like,
Family
there's
members even
so
say she's
much
got a
energy.
golden spoon versus a silver spoon because everything works out.
Exactly. And it's not even that it's just happening, or like there's something like special about me. There's nothing of that nature. It's my energy and intention behind things. If you are yearning for something extremely hard, there's a sense of lack. If you want something so bad, you are focusing more on your lack thereof versus gaining something and earning something. And I think oftentimes it's still something applicable to me. There are times where I'm like, I just want this so bad. Why isn't it coming? And then it doesn't come because of my energy and intention behind it. It's the same thing, like when you said an order to a universe, it made me think of, you know, if you go to a store and you're like, I want this, and your energy,
Demanding.
and you're demanding, they might not even give you the order the way you want it, just because they're annoyed with how you asked, and you're not being polite, if you don't have this air or energy about you. Things might not, gratefulness, any of that, it won't happen the way
allowing.
you want. I also have the analogy of when we were kids, I feel like everyone's had that experience of being in the bathtub and they're like rocking back and forth, and they love seeing the waves go back and forth, and it's so rampant and it's fun. But if you think about it, if the universe or God wants to plant something in your life, if he wants to put these ducks in a row, is he going to put the ducks in a row in rampant water or still water? Obviously the still water, because the ducks are safer. They're not going to turn over. It's a safer environment. So
And things will go accordingly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So within your own self,
disarray and chaos.
if you have this rampant water, it's not going to be placed in your life. So that's why I feel like with the energy and intention behind things, it's important. That's what makes it different versus having that yearning feeling. You'll feel it. You'll know when you're not being grateful enough of the place of where you are. I think that's another thing, is being accepting and allowing to allow it to happen versus trying to force something and just begging for it almost.
Yeah, I mean, I applaud you, and I love watching how you're very intuitive. You look inward and stay in touch with your emotions and thoughts, and sometimes even you let your surroundings be a cue. Hey, I might be out of line here.
Right.
What are some of the triggers that lets you know, hey, I might not be going down the path that I want, or the momentum's going the wrong way? So one is, what are the signs or triggers to you, and then how do you kind of turn the course?
Sometimes it's hard to know. Like, you get so caught up. I'm one of those people. I know we all have been guilty of being on autopilot mode. We don't really notice what we're doing. And I also feel like I deal with derealization. And everyone, you're lying if you haven't suffered
Explain
from
that
this.
for anybody who might
And
not
I
know
will.
what that is.
I'll get into it. So derealization is basically where you feel like you're not a part of your body, or you're watching something happen and it doesn't feel like you're really in it. You're kind of watching it, but you know it's you, but it's still not enough connection there
Feel like more
for
like a
you.
spectator?
It feels more like a spectator, and you're watching. So I deal with that. So that's not even just on a negative level, because it often is associated with like negative things. If something's too stressful, people kind of derealize. But that, I don't suffer it just from that. It's even positive things. I'm like, is this really happening? And that's, I think, something everyone really suffers from. But it's not even a suffering. It's just a way of life that happens. So oftentimes it does take me a while to notice that that's happening, but I feel like the elements kind of ground me. And what I mean by elements, it's almost literal. So whether that's like planting my feet firmly on the ground and just really feeling the earth, that brings me back. Mm-hmm. Taking a cold shower, as random as that sounds, that just that cold air and that feeling, the senses, mm-hmm. It really brings you back. Jolt. And I can reflect. And that's the introspective part of it, being able to be introspective and look at yourself without bias and really see things from all perspectives. And that's when you can kind of realize where your intention is. It's not something that's a snap of the finger. Sometimes it takes a few times to really like judge yourself, not as in a judgmental way, but really understand your pathways.
What I like, that kind of makes me think of planting a seed, and there's times for things to germinate, that it might be just a place that God allows us to go to not feel anxiety or stress or watch the clock of something happening or have too much trauma of a negative thing.
Definitely.
But let it have its perfect timing, because I just know God and the serendipity of Him, His ways. Like maybe you just need to coast a little bit so you land right where you need to be and you get awakened. So sometimes it might be working for us.
Right. It's definitely a mechanism.
Just check it in when your momentum may be picking up in a direction you don't want to. Then you can take control. Not in that striving sense, but just being a part of your consciousness,
right.
And aware of your thoughts. And
it's definitely a regulation mechanism, because if something is too negative, or if it's a traumatizing experience, it can take you away from that, so you don't have to deal with it.
Right.
And also it can take you away from a high moment, so that you don't get too cocky, or you don't keep spiraling and then it turns out to be something bad in the end.
And I guess it's good to know, like, gratefulness would keep something
right.
going, and you don't discount and shorten the blessing. So
correct.
The practice of counting your blessings and being aware and grateful can ground you and keep you going in that direction. Right. Well, from being a very close spectator in your life, I've seen how your thoughts and your feelings, the deepest frequency, the deepest language, has taken you in some dark, dry wildernesses, but I've also seen it to where it brings you into what friends and family say, into your Garden of Eden, where fruit is dropping at your feet, and the serendipity is like angels fanning you. So what do you have to say for people, just to encourage them that life has those polarities and what to do with them? And I think with me, what I'll just say quickly about that is just not to have the judgment of either place. They're all true experiences bringing you to maybe a greater purpose or higher introspection. But what do you have to say about your minds can drive you to either places, but isn't it all for the greater good?
It is. And just adding on to you saying like the no judgment, that's something I mentioned earlier. Having acceptance and allowing, you need to be accepting of where you are at that moment, because then you would be yearning. So I guess I would say change your frequency.
That channel to where you don't want to be.
The channel.
There's an inside joke to that.
But I would say that is one of the biggest factors. Just being accepting and allowing of wherever you are, even if you're in one of your darkest depths of despair, be accepting and knowing that there's a reason for that. And we even talked earlier about sometimes the negative things that are happening in your life aren't your fault.
Oh,
There is sometimes it's the people in your life. Sometimes it's the job you're working at. That's the energy that's being put into your life.
In that
You don't deserve
biohemisphere per se. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't deserve those things that are happening to you. You didn't do anything sometimes. Sometimes maybe you did. That's the law of attraction and how things balance out. But sometimes genuinely there's nothing that you did. It could be someone who is in your, as I say, your magnetic field, because everything does have an attraction, even to the scientific state of being positive and negative. Some things repel, some things attract. And if there's that negative thing in your life being attracted to you, you just need to become a positive force, even stronger, that it gets repelled.
Stay sunny.
So stay
These
sunny.
props were not here on purpose.
So that's just one thing I would give to anyone, and it's a work in progress. And there are moments where I may have a dry spell, I'm not really attracting anything. It's because I'm preoccupied, and that's another thing of
Neutralize.
yeah. And then you just ground yourself again, see where you are.
Germination and rest. I mean, I always bring things back to the farmer or the seed, reaping and sowing, because that's the law of attraction in a nutshell, or in a seed, I should say. And a farmer will know its seasons, and he will also know, let's not till in this ground, let's move to this ground. But there's that travel time and the delay, and just being with that process, and just being easy about it. But did give you some background where that conversation came from. I was asking her, what do you say about the times when somebody might have been robbed? And with the law of attraction, it's saying that you always have attracted your experience. Whatever's happening in your life, you've attracted it through thought or feeling. And she had a great point that kind of actually brought my perspective a little bit more open. In a broad sense, you might have still brought that to you by being in that vicinity or in that area,
Right.
where you chose that friend who is negative.
Right.
And you might have already had some inspiration and nudges to not be so friendly. Don't spend so much time with that person, but you don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Then that person does kind of pull you into their force field, because they might be a little stronger than your current state. So just be mindful that sometimes you might have brought that into your existence, or you could just be a bystander of someone
Right.
else's energy. But I'm just a huge person believing in the law of attraction, to take responsibility for the good and the bad. You just can't
Right.
say I'm just attracting $1 million all the time. No, like
Right,
you gotta
no.
be responsible for all your thoughts.
Right, and I agree, because like there's a thing of like the wrong place, the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
You could be attracting that into your life because maybe you are with some friend that's not really good for you, or maybe you're at a job that just has a lot of like negative energy around it, and you're bringing it into your home, you're bringing it everywhere, into other people's lives. And that's why it's good to be in check and be introspective. But it takes a lot to be introspective, and that's another thing. Just be, accepting, because sometimes a day at a time, sometimes we're clouded. There are times where I totally thought that what I was wearing to school was really cute, but then a few years down the road, and you're like, wow, if I would have been a little more introspective and thought about, how is this going to make me feel? Am I doing this to put on a show for someone else? Like, really see what you're doing.
Have pure intentions.
Have pure intentions with everything you do. And like I said, it's not a piece of cake. It's not. But it's something you can work towards every day. And once you do, you'll start feeling a more rewarding emotion that, wow, I'm really in tune with myself. Because oftentimes,
I just love the serendipity. That's almost more rewarding than actual thing that I'm trying to manifest. Seeing all the pieces come together.
Right.
That's sometimes more thrilling than the end result.
Exactly. And I feel like through all, I'm really into developmental psychology. I feel like through all stages of life, we have some sort of identity crisis. That's like, who am I? What do I like? And doing this little self checklist, and just kind of having conversations with yourself, seeing what you like and what's making you uncomfortable, removing those thorns that you don't really need in your life. I think those are really important ways to even help enhance your law of attraction, because you are removing that negative energy and only making yourself stronger.
Yeah, having a pure energy does make things smoother and faster. You can neutralize your manifestations by being double-minded or having contradictive thoughts because you are trying to be something you're not, or being with somebody who is just usurping all the work you're trying to do. So
Right.
It can be a lot. It can sound like a lot to babysit and watch and monitor, but it's just always just protect how you feel. How do I feel, and what can I do to change how I feel? And then the rest just falls into place. And just the times of stillness, meditation will definitely course correct either downloads from God, He'll give it to you straight, or just feeling better, just resetting your energy and frequency. I guess we've covered that part. Is there anything you would like to bring that we haven't talked about? Any other components that you feel help a person know where they are on the journey, or how to wield the law of attraction? Is there anything you want to add?
I guess just
Or
to add
anything to
that
let
it's-
go sometimes either. Sometimes
Right.
letting go of things.
That's true. I feel like it's very subjective. Like I said, some of these things that we may be suggesting won't work for you because every person is different. And knowing that, that's the whole point of being introspective. I feel like that is the one thing that will help with everybody,
The
is
specifics
because
will be different.
it will be able to mold to you, and to not be afraid to try, because like she was saying, babysitting everything, that can seem really like taxing. That's a lot to do. But if you think about it, learning how to drive, at first that might have been a little scary. It's a lot to be like, oh my gosh, I gotta check this mirror,
Yeah, I
check
know,
that
yeah.
mirror, can I switch lanes, oh, gotta check that one too.
Then it becomes second
But
nature.
then it becomes second nature. And then sometimes we do have our little mess ups, being like, dang, I just really can't drive today. I feel like if you just practice it as much as you can, it'll come to you naturally. It is something that is supposed to be a way of life. This is something that mankind was supposed to discover and be able to wield and use. So there are no inhibitions. The only inhibition is
Being
within
yourself.
yourself. And I props to anyone who is willing to try, those who are investigating it.
Test and you shall see. God says taste and you shall see. Like, just jump in and figure it out. And what works this season might not work the next season, or it might work forever. Just, there's no staunch
Right.
rules. There's just a law. There's a law in place, and that is the reaping and the sowing. So just be mindful of what you're sowing, and that can mean anything. And your conversation just now about inhibitions, one thing I really felt so freed is when I stopped equating things to time. I didn't know
Yes.
there was such an internal clock racing that I had to get to a purpose or a place or get a thing within time, and it created such an impatience in me. And impatience was my nemesis, because it was like lack of faith. When you are impatient, it causes you to keep asking, and you're always in the asking mode,
Right.
never getting in the receiving mode. Like, I trust, I'm just waiting. I was always in the asking, where is it?
And then the
And
time
and
is not
striving. So
allowing.
that was a lot of rippled waters, and then that makes you then go into like, it doesn't work then. This is the you doubt. So when I remove, there's no rush, there's no time. I have all the time in the world to make this happen. And however and whenever it happens, it's the perfect timing. That has opened so much of the floodgates for me. So
Right.
that might be something you can maybe find in your path, and you can learn from my mistakes and figure that one out.
Right, and if you're on like this time, like, oh, this, it's not allowing. That's not allowing
You're in your
things
way.
to happen because you're in your own way. I guess my only like 2 tidbits I would say, I was telling her not too long ago about how sometimes the law of attraction is kind of like having a genie. If in Aladdin, they had times where he would wish for something, and then that is not necessarily what he wanted, or
And the genie would always be like, "Are you
any fable. It was like, are you sure that's what you want to wish for? Because if you are too specific, it might snowball affect some other things in your life that you weren't really expecting, because you were so specific that it now attaches to other things. Or if you're too broad, you have no idea what you may be dealing with. So it's like a happy medium thing. And I believe that your passing thoughts are sometimes your most
More
powerful.
accurate.
And they're the more accurate ones.
Coming from the depth of you, outside of where some of the murky waters might be. It's from
Right.
a pure well. Being too specific sometimes will be your plight, because you are kind of telling God how and when it should happen, and that gets you back into the you're doing it, and there may be some tide of worthiness to it. Like it's not about us being worthy. He just wants to do it for us. So, but the specifics can too specific can get you ensnared. So you can get somewhat specific. Like,
Right.
I want a big, beautiful, bright home. Not, I want a home this many square feet on this street, this color. I'm
Right.
creating so many demands that I now have to employ more faith, more allowing. There's a lot more that you have to do. But if you just go, I trust God that He's always trying to make me happy.
God's got this.
Yeah, that He's always going to give me my greatest good, and everything's going to work out for my good. That surprise and delight can be there. Like the whole genie story. Sometimes in the story Aladdin, if you're too specific, you didn't give the time for God to give you what you really wanted. Like He has
Or
a
needed in
bigger
that moment.
Yeah, He has a bigger imagination, and has more creativity. So leaving it up to the big guy with the
Right.
big creativity, sometimes that's the better way to go. Good
Exactly.
points.
I guess to like add on to that story, there's no specific template of like to want and attract this. This is how you must say it. This
ABC.
is the perfect syntax. But I guess just for a story, I was in middle school one day and I was just really feeling some cake. I was just like, I just want some cake. And so I just thought to myself, it was just like a quick passing thought, I want cake. I want some birthday cake. And then I went to my after school program that day, and it was someone's birthday, and then we all sang happy birthday, and I got myself a big piece of cake. So it was something very simple, something I attracted very small, but that in its sense, it was not too general. It could have been any cake, but it was actually birthday cake. I got the birthday cake, and I was like, wow, I attracted this. Maybe back then I didn't really see that's what I was doing, but it definitely...
That was the beginning of
It was the
very
very beginning.
successful career in manifesting, I'll tell you.
Yes. And then my last tidbit would be to investigate your learning style, because I think that the law of attraction, once again, is another subject that you're just learning. Everyone has their own learning style, whether you're a visual learner, whether you're an audible learner. There's all different ways. Analytical. There's so many different ways that people learn. Personally, I'm a visual learner. So that way I make things that are visual focused. So I have a vision board. I have an app for it because these days
Everything's virtual.
but I just pick flash images and I put them on this little board, and then it has a mantra that I see every day, and it has a timer for me to look at it in the morning and at night, and it just flashes before me to reach my subconscious. Or at any time in the day, I just want to look through it and remind myself, what I want, my goals. And I think that's a way to help as a visual learner. But maybe you like to read. Maybe you want to read on the law of attraction, or read about the things that you want in your life. So it just kind of subconsciously gets into your brain, creates those journal lists, and it creates those passing thoughts. The more that you surround yourself in your environment, that's those superficial thoughts that just kind of start flooding in. And so then you'll just start having thoughts about it, and you'll be attracting it. So if you can find your learning style, it'll help you tackle the law of attraction.
Love it. So I'll just wrap up. We'll add on some of the fun things that just this season, very recent, where she's made a list in her vision board of things she wanted and attracted. So we'll screenshot some of her lists that she's had and how she's gotten them effortlessly and at great deals.
Can I just say that quarantine has been the perfect time for stillness?
Yes.
The perfect time for stillness.
Less interference.
Exactly. No inhibitions. I was purely just focusing on myself and had that moment where I could just see where I was, be introspective, and nothing else was feeding in. So So I was able to attract a lot of these things from that.
Very good. So we'll try to add those in if that would actually make it more than 2 videos. So we'll see what we're gonna do. So, but you can see we can talk about this all the time. Thank you all for tuning in, and
Thank you for having me.
you're welcome. See you next time, and may you enjoy the journey within.